Do you enjoy making slimline cards but are wondering about slimline envelopes? Hi, I'm Jess from JessCrafts.com and I'm here to help you make the most of your crafty supplies in time. So let's get making. Today I want to talk about slimline envelopes. So I like to make slimline cards. I just like to kind of change up the different sizes of cards I make to keep things interesting. I do make a lot of A2 cards, but I also share 5x7 slimline, and I even have a few mini slimline here on the channel. I make paper busting templates. So if you're finding this video for some other reason you don't normally watch my channel, what I do is I make these templates that show you how to cut patterned paper so that there are no scraps when you're done making your card. So for instance, this is 12x12 paper busting template for slimline cards number 4, which means I'm taking 12x12 paper and I'm cutting it and then assembling it according to this sketch so that you make 4 cards with no scraps. I do this with all kinds of card sizes and paper sizes. So I have slimline templates for 6x6 paper, 6x8 paper, and now 12x12 paper. And so they are available at jesscrafts.com for you to download for free and give them a try. I also sell packs in my Etsy shop for those who find that easier in terms of printing. But I wanted to address slimline envelopes because when I create these slimline card templates, it's a common question that I get, and so hopefully I can help people with that today. My slimline cards that I am referring to are 3.5 by 8.5 inches. I picked this size because it is what I can create with an 8.5 by 11 piece of cardstock, and while there is a chunk of cardstock left over, it does take advantage of the 8.5 length of the cardstock. Now, when I make a slimline card, often I will be donating it to an organization that doesn't require envelopes. There's a lot of organizations. I link on jesscrafts.com, which is my website, and I'm going to refer to some different resources that you can get there today that are hopefully helpful. So I link organizations that accept handmade cards, and a lot of them will accept cards in various sizes and do not need envelopes. Others accept cards in specific sizes and do need envelopes. But that is one way that I get around needing to figure out envelopes for my slimline cards, or I hand deliver them. So like maybe I give it with a gift, so I just put it in the gift bag or just hand it to someone. But there are options for envelopes, so that's what we're going to really focus in on today. The first and the most, what I would say, accessible option for pre-made envelopes is letter number 10 envelopes. That's what I believe that's what they're called in the US. The number 10 envelopes are business envelopes or letter envelopes. And so they are meant to hold a folded up piece of 8.5 by 11 paper. And so they also work well for these cards that are 8.5 inches long. Now, something that I do notice is there is a little bit of extra room on the sides. So if you're used to the more snug fit that a sort of invitation type envelope would give, you might find this to be a little bit roomy for an 8.5 by 11 card, but I think that it absolutely works. Sometimes they are printed with a like security coloring on them because they're used for mailing business and checks and things like that. But you can find them without, this one is, and they are usually, you can find them much more readily than some other envelopes. So you can probably even find them at the grocery store or things like that, but they may have the security feature, but then they wouldn't necessarily, if you don't like that, it wouldn't be a good fit. But they do fit the slimline cards, so that would be one suggestion. I am just going to suggest that you look up whatever the regulations for your postal service are. I believe, my experience in the US, if it's under the correct weight, that you should only need a single stamp for this. But again, you can confirm that with your postal service. And then the other option, which is very similar, but I did find these on Amazon, is something that fits a little bit more like a invitation type envelope. And these are specifically meant for slimline cards. I found them by searching slimline envelopes. And as you can see, there's just a little bit less room on the side. It fits, I'll show you this way too, because this is the purple is the very edge of the card. And so it fits a little bit more snugly. The paper is a slightly higher quality than the envelopes that I got at the, at a drugstore or wherever I found them. It does have the pull tab, which you could find that, or you know, likely could find that for these as well. But the price difference is pretty significant. I think these, if I did the math correctly, were like under 10 cents an envelope, and these were over 20 cents an envelope. So, you know, double or triple the price. Just for some people, it might be a pretty minimal difference. But the last option I wanted to explore with you today is how you could make your own slimline envelopes, because I know that if you're not making very many of them, that might be a good option, especially if you are like hand delivering them, it might be a good option. So let's look at what I have for you today. We're gonna use some 8.5 by 11 patterned paper. You could use printer paper, I suppose. It's pretty thin though. I don't know how well it would protect your card, but there are thicker and thinner printer papers out there. Cardstock might be a little too thick. I think this could be a great way of using if you have extra 8.5 by 11 paper. I found this stack at an arts and crafts thrift store, and I'll also link you that in the video description, but there were like some papers that I might find more challenging to use. And so being able to turn them into a envelope is a great way. And I've talked about that before on my channel. Like, you know, if you have a piece of patterned paper, you don't know what to do with it, you know, because it's a little too busy or something like that, one of my suggestions is turning it into an envelope. Okay, so how to make a slimline envelope. This is going to be a printable. It's also going to include a larger version of the template. It's kind of made small here, but I'm going to include it larger just in case the writing's a little too small on this one. And there is a minor correction that's going to be needed to these measurements, but that'll be fixed before it gets to you. Okay, so that'll be linked in the video description. We are going to start. I wrote down the steps here, and I'll say them all verbally and clearly out loud, but this way if you don't want to rewatch the video, you can have that for reference in the future. And this specifically works for 3.5 by 8.5 inch slimline cards. I know there are other tutorials out there for other sizes of slimline card. I just wanted one that works specifically for the cards that I make so that I can reference it for those who are interested. Okay, holding the paper in portrait orientation so that you have the shorter side at the top, the 8.5 by 11 side. You're going to score at 2¼ inches and 6¼ inches. My scoreboard is a little bit limited in terms of this tutorial because it's quite small. I've had it for many, many years. It's been discontinued. I have not felt the need to replace it because it functions well, and I don't do a ton of larger scoring like this, but I do just, I know that about it. And so I'm not, you know, if you feel like you're going to do a lot of this kind of stuff, this might not be the ideal scoreboard for you, but you can make it work. So what I did is I scored at 2¼ and 6¼ and then because it didn't go all the way down the paper, I just turned the paper and did it again and met those score lines up. And so they are definitely difficult to see because I have a striped paper here, but I can then score it and I have this 2¼ flap on each side. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is turn the paper into landscape orientation, or with the 11-inch side at the top. And this time it asks you to score it, or I've asked you to score it, I guess, at 1¼ And then the other measurement I've given you is 10¼ Now, that's not going to work for me. My scoreboard does not go that far. And so the 10¼ and that's why I wanted to include this template for you as well, so that you can see that basically you're creating 1¼ at the top and then 3/4 inch at the bottom. I might even add a measurement to show that what the size of that is. Okay, so this is 3/4 inch on this side. Now here, because it's only a little bit hanging off, I'm probably just going to slide it up and finish that measurement off. Same thing on this side. It didn't quite reach the bottom because my scoreboard ends at 8 inches, and finish off that 1/2 inch. Okay. So again, you can see, even though the line is hard there, that they score there. Okay. Next thing we need to do is cut out the corners. I'm just going to take a scissor for this one. I'm going to cut on the folded score lines And I'm going to cut out each of these rectangles in the corner. The ones on the bottom are going to be slightly smaller because my bottom flap is slightly smaller. And then I'm going to cut along the score lines at the top to cut out this corner here. I got a little excited and cut a little too far up there, but that's okay. And we are next going to round the corners. This is kind of an optional step, but I think it gives a nice finished look to this kind of thing. You can also use a paper trimmer to do this cutting if your trimmer lets you make like partial cuts. Okay, so you can use either side for the outside of your envelope. The nice thing about using pattern paper for envelopes, especially if it's double-sided, is you get that little like detail on the inside. But if your paper is not double-sided, you could still, you know, you could do things to add a little bit of interest to the inside. Okay, so I have my We Are Memory Keepers corner chomper. Any sort of corner rounder would do, and you absolutely don't need to do this step, but you're going to round the corners of these long flaps here on the side, and I show you in the template where the rounding should happen, just in case it's a little unclear in the directions. But we're rounding the corners of all of the flaps. So we're also going to round the corner of the top flap. The bottom flap, in my particular case, I do need to fold in the side in order to access that corner. Okay. And then the last step is just to adhere your envelope together. This is going to be the part where the card sits, if that's unclear. I recommend a strong adhesive such as score tape for this part of the project. I often use Scotch ATG, but it actually isn't the like strongest hold out there. If I had a preference, I would choose glue, and my glue is normally in my holder and I've lost it. Oh, here it is. Sorry about that. Something to be aware of if you're going to choose the glue option is that you just want to make sure you don't use so much glue that it seeps out and adds a little glue to the inside of your envelope. There's also not a lot of overlap between these two. The amount of like space is maybe like a 1/4 inch or so, so you don't want to add too much adhesive with whichever adhesive method you're using. Okay, and then we want to glue the bottom flap. Here the whole flap is going to be glued down, but again, don't use so much glue that it's going to seep onto the inside of the card. You will want to make sure that you give it a little bit of pressure as it dries if you're using a liquid glue, so that you can make sure you get a nice seal here, and then you're going to be able to slip your card inside your envelope and then adhere the top flap with whatever your preferred method of glue, adhesive, etc. is. And then you would have a slimline card slimline envelope. Again, I encourage you to find out what the regulations for how to mail something like this is where you are, because I can't speak to that. Specifically, my understanding is, especially if it's solid, it should be fine. It's mostly about the readability of the address and that kind of thing in terms of US, because that's the only place I really have experience mailing things. But again, just to kind of confirm all of that. And then you have a handmade option, a very sort of like invitation style option, a little bit pricier, but like it fits very, very well. And then there is, of course, the business envelope option that I've left somewhere in all of this mess, but the most inexpensive, accessible option. You don't have to like learn how to make envelopes or anything, but hopefully this has given you an idea, or, you know, again, just sending it to an organization that accepts the cards but doesn't need the envelopes. So hopefully that has given you some information on what to do in terms of envelopes with slimline cards. If you found this video helpful, here's another video where you can find more ideas for enjoying your crafty time and supplies. Let me know you like this video with a share to your crafty community, subscribe and click the bell so you don't miss the next template or tutorial, and check the video description for product links. See you in the next video.